Senator Rice,
Thank you, Chair.
got some questions, and then
Great.
Senator Hanson.
Terrific. Good, thank you. Look, I want to ask about some rail projects and business case related things. So Melbourne Airport Rail first up. So the government committed $30 million for the development of business case for Melbourne Airport Rail in the budget. So I'm wanting an update as to what has happened with that project since then.
Just before Executive Director, to date the Australian and Victorian governments have been in negotiations with regard to the scope of that project. We're anticipating that over the next probably a month or so that there will be more information coming out to the public.
So in terms of the scope and the detail, you know, when do you expect to have, so you expect to have that completed in that month, in a month's time?
We're establishing a joint committee, as we do with a lot of our major projects, which will have Dr Kennedy sitting on the committee with the head of the Victorian department, and from that they will oversee any works going forward. We're just trying to negotiate all of the terms of reference and everything in regards to that at the moment, and then from there they will actually outline what the program of works is over the next 12 months.
So you expect to have the terms of reference announced in a month's time, basically, and then we'll move forward from there?
Probably, I would say that we would have something before the end of the year. Yep.
Right. And so what is your expectation then of what the timing of the business case being developed is likely to be?
I think we'd have a preliminary business case. I think we're hoping within the next 12 months.
Right. And while that business case is being developed, has there been any other discussions about sort of contributions or financing of projects that are going to come out of the project, you know, once we get to the completion of the business case?
Not at this stage, Senator.
So it's basically going to be done sequentially. Yeah. So we'll have a business case 12 months' time, hopefully.
That's what
and
we're
then
intending.
The discussions will begin?
That's what we're intending.
Right, so nothing preliminary. Okay. All right, moving on to the faster rail connections project. Now, is that a different project to the National Rail project that we were discussing before?
Yes, so the National Rail Program is the $10 billion funding allocation. The Faster Rail Prospectus is the opportunity to look at connections between regional and capital cities to see if we can actually get faster connections between where people live and where the employment bases are.
And so there's $20 million of funding for business cases there as well. So what's the process in terms of selection of which projects will be funded to help develop business cases?
So the government released a Faster Rail Prospectus in September. That sets out the process, and we're happy to provide you with a copy of that. Basically, we're going through a 3-stage process at the moment, and the criteria is all outlined in that prospectus. The first stage closed on the 13th of October.
Right.
And we're hoping to have everything finalised.
So what was that first stage then?
So the first stage outlined basically the corridors that people were to be interested in, provided information on the common. So they're coming forward with the corridors, not us. We set out in the prospectus potential corridors, but they could come forward with their project that actually highlighted the exact corridors that they were actually interested in. Information on the companies, for example, what type of project that they were talking about, whether it was actually, for example, new technology, or whether it was actually rolling stock, whether it was, you know, a new line, etc. And from there we'll go to a second stage, which will have to provide far more detail about the project, information about funding and things like that, and then we'll actually go through to a business case.
So Senator, there's a shortlisting process based on those initial proposals. Those shortlisted applicants will then proceed to provide the fuller business cases that Ms Hall mentioned, and then from those they'll actually then receive a decision in relation to who will be funded for those business cases.
So clarifying, so your announcement on the 13th of October, so that that released the information about all of the the projects that have been put before you, that
received-
long list of everything that you had received?
We haven't released anything at this stage. As you can imagine, there's a whole range of issues in regards to commercial and confidence, and there's a range of issues in regards to companies actually competing for similar lines, for example, or similar corridors. So at this stage, we haven't released anything.
So what was released on the 13th of October?
No, the stage 1 closed on 13th of
Right.
October.
Okay.
The prospectus was released in September.
Okay. So can you tell me how many different proposals have been put forward to the department?
Senator Andrew Hulls, I'm General Manager, Rail Policy and Planning. We've received 26.
26. And how many different lines or alignments are being looked at?
They vary, so some of them are kind of more than one potential project, so we're still going through the process of assessing them, Senator.
And have some of them come from private companies? How many have come from private companies? How many from state governments?
They've come from a range of proponents, so state governments, consortiums as well as individuals.
So at what stage do you plan to release publicly any information about what projects have been put forward to you?
So obviously, at the following the completion of the assessment of stage 2, the government will obviously make an announcement about which proponents will go forward for the business case assessment.
And you will announce that at that stage. So once you've got a short list, then it will be, you'll announce what's public. You'll announce that publicly, and then you got the short list. So how many, do you have an expectation of how many business cases will be funded under the $20 million funding?
The government at the moment is committed to 3.
Right. And what's your expectation of how long the shortlist is going to be then?
At this stage, we wouldn't be able to comment. We're only just going through them at the moment.
But you wouldn't expect that all the projects on the shortlist will end up being
No.
funded? No. So that's your shortlist. Okay. And so once you then have 3, so am I correct in thinking that sort of any business case developed under this package would then be put forward to Infrastructure Australia for evaluation and potential future Commonwealth contributions?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Depending on the amount of money that they're actually seeking. Yep.
Right. And so it could be a private sector consortium that could be then asking for Commonwealth contributions towards their project.
That would be correct. Saying that, I think they will actually have to work with a state government as well, given that the state governments obviously own the land and the track and all of those sorts of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that the Consolidated Land and Rail Australia have put in a submission to you. They have announced that publicly, that they've put in a submission. It seems to be highly unusual for a private company to be able to access this money, and then even further then to be accessing potentially accessing Commonwealth funding for their private project.
I think at this stage the funding that the government's put on the table is for the business case development, Senator.
Okay. Have there been any, I should have asked this of Infrastructure Australia before, but have there previously been any submissions of business cases from private entities to Infrastructure Australia for assessment?
That is a question for Infrastructure Australia, but I believe they have had some. They've assessed, for example, their Air Peninsula infrastructure project. It's one of their projects that they've assessed out of their 20, so yes.
Okay, but that one, so there's been one example previously. Okay. Thank you for that. Finally, just a couple of questions on the Melbourne Port Rail Shuttle project. So what's the status of that from the Commonwealth's perspective?
We'll just get Ms. Leeming to come up to the table to answer the questions on that.
Just take me a minute, Senator, to find that one. Just to confuse you, Mr Hiles does some rail projects and I do some others, but I'll get you an answer on that in a minute. So the Port Rail project, you probably would have seen there was an expression of interest recently put out by the Victorian Government. I can find you the date of that in a minute. So that document went out on the 11th of September 2017, released by Transport for Victoria, and that EOI closes on the 31st of October 2017. This is a competitive process. They've invited bids from whoever is interested in delivering this project. You'll be aware that the Australian government allocated 58 million to it. Both governments allocated 58 million and 38 was from the Commonwealth. I guess because there's an EOI at the moment, we're a bit restricted with what we can say, with what sort of bids have come in. I'm just not aware of that, and it's a competitive process that hasn't yet closed.
So what's your expectation, so once the closure of the EOI process, of what the timing of the actual development and undertaking of the project is going to be?
I think a lot will depend on what sort of bids they get. The Victorian Government and the Commonwealth Government will sit together on a steering committee for this project, so we'll get the chance to sort of discuss timings, just look at the sorts of bids that have been provided, and work together to deliver the project. I don't have any more specific timings than that. But I presume that, given that the Victorian Government has been so tardy in getting this project underway, the Commonwealth is keen to see it happen as quickly as possible? We're keen to be involved in the project, absolutely. And okay, so the steering committee will continue through the EOI process and then through the implementation of the project? We haven't got to the stage of discussing that yet, but we do know that they're keen to have us as a partner on this project, and we are too. We can provide you with an update on that next time we're before the committee. That's probably the better timing. Yep. I think it's probably a little bit too early to say. Okay, thank you.